Welcome to Flip of the Week. Today I'm going to be showing you a few different methods of muffling the drums. Now, why would we muffle drums? Well, number one reason, if they're ringing or they're too loud, or if somebody else in the band kind of asks you to. That's usually what I've always found. A drum might be ringing and singing and sounding great, but it doesn't sound that way to somebody else, and sometimes we have to compromise. So I'm going to show you a few little things that might help you still feel like you're playing your drums, but can also help compromise with whoever it is that needs it to be quieter. For example, the sound guy, they might be getting a funny ring through their microphone that you're not hearing, but it's picking up that frequency. And if on their end they can dial out that frequency and get that ringing out, great. If they can't, it's usually in our best interest to try to take over and fix it from our end, because not only does that show that you're willing to work with them, but you still can kind of have a bit of control of how comfortable you are, and you don't have people coming over and putting a bunch of tape or anything like that. And you'd be surprised that if you can make things sound good to everyone quickly, people remember that. So the first method, which is a time-tested method that works for pretty much everyone, is using tape. There's several different tapes you could use. You could use gaffer's tape or duct tape. I'm a big fan of duct tape because it doesn't leave too much glue on a head as long as you don't leave it there a long time. So I usually roll up a little bit, then put it near the corner of a snare drum to kind of kill that little bit of ring. If I need to, or if I really need a lot of dampening, I'll take the tape and I'll tape up a piece of paper towel and put that across maybe a floor tom that's ringing too much. Tape, like duct tape, can also be used to take some of the high overtones of a very ringy cymbal out, and that can definitely change the playability of it, but sometimes can help get more of the stick definition to come out. Another method that works well to dampen a drum, usually it's the snare drum that I find is the one that people need a little bit less ring from. I like a lot of ring, but sometimes it does sound a little better through microphones without so much. Another method that's easy and it's kind of a dual purpose is having a towel around. I usually like to have a very small hand towel with me anyway in case I'm sweating or I need to wipe off water that spills or something on my pedals. So it also comes in handy to use as a muffler. I'm going to show you a couple examples where it's either on the snare drum a little bit or a lot, or on a floor tom, and you can hear a couple of different sounds. Another method that works well for the snare drum, to make it sound very boxy, kind of like more of a retro late 60s, early 70s kind of sound, is putting a t-shirt, because they're not only a lot thinner than towels, but they're going to stay on a drum a lot better, and there'll be more of an even sound around the whole head of the drum. Another method I found is a very last resort, and it's just quick and easy. If you're playing and you're maybe doing a song where you have to lay into the drum a little more and there's just a little bit too much ring, is throw your wallet on the drum. Now, if you play the snare drum kind of angled towards yourself like I do, sometimes it doesn't always help because the wallet will start to slide down. So if you like the sound of that, you can put maybe a little piece of tape and keep it there. Another great thing about using a wallet is if you have a much thinner wallet or something like it, it will bounce and it will usually self-gate the drum. That means that the harder you hit it, the longer the sustain because of the bounce of the muffling system. But as soon as it touches the drum, it will kill the sound. So if you hit it softer, less ring, hit it harder, you get a little more ring. Another method of muffling I found was useful for my snare drums was using this small leather pouch that Pearl came out with a while back. It's just a small leather pouch that they keep the drum key in, which I found practical to have with all my snare drums. But also, it worked as a muffling system. I would tie it to the bottom tension rod and just swing it over the edge of the drum, and that works as kind of like a very small wallet sound as well. Another method to muffle is using parts of your body. For example, you can use your elbow if you're playing on a floor tom, if you want to mute it a little bit, or if you even want to bend the pitch, say for example like a snare drum. Another muffling example is using your hands. For example, your fingers, much like that of a timpani grip, where you use your pointer and your thumb fingers to hold the stick, and you use your last three fingers to mute the drum. That can also work well for choking a cymbal and muffling that. Another method of muffling is using the stick tip itself by either playing a restricted dead stroke by pushing right into the drum, or by playing something similar to a dead stroke where you strike the drum and then immediately kill the sound by using the tip of the stick and digging it into the drum. It doesn't have to be very forceful to bury it there, just enough to kill the ring of the drum. Another method is you can tune things lower. Generally, the lower you tune something, the less it'll ring, because there won't be as much tension in the head, so it won't be able to vibrate as much. You could try tuning down just one tension rod of the top of the floor tom, or tuning down the bottom of a really high snare drum and seeing if that helps. You kind of have to experiment with that one, but I'll show you one quick example on my floor tom. The last few examples of muffling I have are just ones that I've heard people use. I have tried pillows in the bass drum. I'm not personally that much of a fan of that sound, but they do work. If I ever do have to use a pillow, I try to use the smallest one possible and rest it on the floor of the bass drum, just so that it touches both heads, or only the resonant head, that's the front head, just so that it just cuts out a little bit of the ring. The reason for it is if you put too much stuffing in your bass drum, you're not really working with the full air that could be in that drum, and you're not just muffling the heads, you're also killing the amount of air that can move around the drum. So then you're really kind of choking the sound of it. As I said, I'm not really a fan of that, but that can be useful for some things. Another thing I haven't tried often, but it has worked, is putting cotton balls inside your tom-toms. Now, the problem with that is, of course, you have to open them up to get them out. But if you really like the sound of the drum, and you just have a little too much ring and you figure you're probably not going to want to take them out, try that. You can throw a couple of cotton balls from the dollar store or something right through the air hole right into the drum, and they should kind of bounce lightly inside, make no sound, but help to muffle the bottom head. And the last idea that I've seen work is an idea I got from Carmine Appice, who used strips of newspaper. That's right. Just took a normal newspaper, tore it up into 1 or 2 inch strips, and just fed it into the bass drum, then put the head on, and it kind of swims around in there when you strike it. And it just gave kind of a very resonant sound, but with just enough muffling that it gave kind of a more of a retro sound, almost like a drum with no hole in it, or like with a felt strip or something that, you know, a lot of drummers used in the 60s. So hope all those ideas work for you. You find what works to make you happy, the engineers, the audience, the other band members, and of course your drums happy. Try not to use too much duct tape or anything and get all that residue on your drums. They don't really like that. It's hard to get that off. But hopefully that gives you some ideas, and you can get your drums sounding the way you need them to. And tune in next week for the next flip of the week.